Okay. We're started. You're going to say?
Oh, well, I think we're just picking up where we left off last week. But the card I pulled today was the scales of balance, which is you are tantrika, on the initiate on the path of divine healing of the masculine and feminine, the two sacred polarities that are universal to human experience. As these energies come into mutual respect and balance, you attain great power, presence, and healing effect in the world of the soul and in the human worlds of forms here on the earth.
Yeah. Well, so that goes back to like when we were talking about what was that last week again? Because I know it turned into this big thing with the masculine, but I don't think that was Mondays. What did we talk about Monday?
No, Monday, the only thing I wrote down from last week is balances the masculine and feminine role resolution. So
the role resolution's right, but there was something else I can't remember. Let me look at my book and see if I had anything more. Probably not, because I tend to not, and then I'm going like, what did we talk about?
I don't know.
Nope. So, because I know somewhere midweek was when this whole wounded, like the wounded feminine, the wounded masculine terms came in. Wow, that's such a powerful. So I was watching somebody doing video, and they were talking about it's time to resolve the wounded feminine, and I was like, oh, that's just exactly like what we're talking about. Except what we keep on overlooking is that the wounded masculine is just as important. And so, and we have so many and the more I'm observing it, the more I see so many of these little frictions, like in all of these layers of consciousness, like everywhere. And they're all coming up, and we're getting all pissed off at each other. We're getting pissed off at ourselves. We're getting pissed off at the whole thing. It's just so funny because it's all this stuff coming up for resolution. I don't even know where to start with that, because it's so embedded in like every single conversation, every single action right now.
Right. It is, we talk about in Trinity, the alignment of thought, word, and deed, and unconditional love. It even permeates that.
Mm-hmm.
It's in that, and actually when you think about it, it's in the DNA, because there's masculine and there's feminine.
Yeah.
It's that deep, that ingrained, that everlasting.
Well, except the funny thing is, if you look at what we're going through collectively, right, we're seeing the beginning steps we've seen the beginning steps of the resolution of that, because we have a lot of kids, a lot of young adults now, like claiming, asexuality, right?
Androgyny, yeah.
Androgyny, and flex the sexuality of whatever. And I know the gender roles are so the thing is, and we talk about gender roles, right? But gender roles is still a role.
Right.
And the thing is, what I tell anybody is, you can say what you want, but every single one of us have the attributes of all of it inside of us. Right. So if you choose to embody the feminine, or you choose to embody the masculine, still does not mean you do not have the other energy within you. It's just that you tend to suppress that more because you would rather embody this one for whatever reason.
Right.
And my belief has been, and I've said this a lot, is that this whole upsurge in that asexuality and the androgyny and all that kind of stuff, and the gender role changing, going back and forth, lots of trans stuff.
Right. Well, and it not being it's become a choice of what you are going to reflect.
Exactly. So the challenge is like, and we still have, like, if we hold on 2 seconds. I'm going to put this on pause for a second. Okay. So, and it's so embedded into our conversation, like we were just talking about, right? Right. The implication that if you act like a girl, that you're being weak.
Right.
from a
And
man's
that's the
perspective.
epitome of the insult to call a man a woman.
Right. And by the way, that goes back to that wounded masculine, because it is the underlying belief that the masculine has to prove itself better because it feels subordinate to the female energies.
Right.
You know, and it's really interesting, because when we think about that, and so it's a constant, no, I have to enforce that, and I have to continuously like reinforce that and reiterate that and put that into my speech, right? Speech patterns. Like the thing that always makes me cringe is when people still do the thing like, oh, he's just a boy.
Oh, right. Like that excuses whatever they are choosing to be.
Right.
Or explains it.
And like, that means nothing to me. When people say that, I'm just like, that means nothing to me. Every child, every person has masculine and feminine attributes. And beyond what we stereotype, really the masculine and feminine attributes have to do with separation-based creation and unity-based creation. So you have unity energies and you have separation energies in all of us. And so it's a matter of finding this balance and stopping. You know, I always tell my kids that they were a long-term test case of bringing them up without enforcing roles on them, like in saying, oh, like you have to do this, or you have to wear pink to be a girl, or you have to wear dresses, or you have to be frilly, or you have to play with dolls. We never did any of that, you know. And it was like and if we would have had a boy, it would have been the exact same opposite, you know, exact same the other way. We have that so embedded. So like people say, and I hear this all the time, like, oh, well, you know what it's like having boys. And I'm like, no, honestly, I don't. Like, and, you know, and people say, oh, well, they do this and they do this. And it's like, well, so did my girls. But that was also because I didn't suppress it in them, right?
Right.
And my girls both have like they can have some very, what we call masculine attributes, because they can be very assertive and strong and, you know, strong-willed, and at the same time, they also can embrace the other. So it's such and that's where we start, right? So like, that's where we start. What about, like you were saying right before we started recording, is like, what about the males? Like, you know, when a male calls another guy a pussy, right?
Right.
And that, that implies that makes him weak and, you know,
right.
And not a man and not manly enough, you know?
So what does that really mean? Imagine if the reality of that was a compliment.
Right. Right. You know, I always laugh and said, so you try giving birth to a child and you tell me about what's a pussy. Just saying.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, but it's all, and then it's, of course, and then the guy, like a man will come back and be like, oh, well, that's what women always fall back on, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, right. Because there's, hold on a second. Again, my cat is going to knock over this plant. He's going to fall and hurt himself. Hey, down. I don't understand why he's suddenly so interested in bamboo.
You recorded that.
I did. So anybody has any ideas, let me know, because he's like obsessed with this plant now, and I have to keep on taking him off the piano because he goes, hey, and he starts chewing on it. And it's in a big, heavy ceramic, you know, pot, and I'm just afraid it's just going to come crashing on the floor. Anyway, so here he goes again. Hold on a minute. Okay, let's see how long this lasts while he's interested in something out the window. So, you know, and we have all this, so if you think about it, like we've been talking about in the last several weeks, there's so many layers of pointing fingers to each other, right? Like, and I hear it just as much with women going, oh my God, he's such a man, like implying he's so clueless.
Right. Or insensitive,
inept. Right. And so it's done in all these different really subtle ways. But the more we continue, and this is a big crusade of mine as we brought up our kids, the more we continue to perpetuate those things that we impart in our children by saying, oh, don't be such a wuss, don't be such a pussy, don't be,
Right.
Like, or, oh, be a lady, so, like what a pretty, what a pretty young lady, making that be like what people,
Right.
what girls should really aspire to, versus how about how smart and vivacious and, and, funny and all that kind of stuff. It's just, so there's all of those things, right? And those are huge to begin with, right? To just change our vocabulary around that.
Well, I mean, even once you start becoming aware, I think that alone is so in your face, and then to start eliminating it from your energies, and then seeing how all of a sudden it's like so neon in other people's, and then to hold that place of non-judgment to allow them to become aware and move through and become accepting of both.
Right.
I mean, that's such a deep resolution. Talk about collective.
Right. And if we just all committed to changing that within ourselves, it would change everything else overnight, right? It goes back to going back to finding that peace within yourself and acceptance and wholeness.
Right.
And then you have no desire or need to put anybody else down, right?
Right.
Or any energy or anything like that. And so that's been really big this past week.
Well, I'm sure Mother's Day had something to do with that.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean,
I'm sure. And it was funny because I laughed because, I'm not one of those mothers that expects like all this stuff, because I'm like going, okay, my husband and I have a partnership. My kids have been expected to do with, like a lot in their own lives. And so it's not like I need a day off or anything else. It's just like, my kids took me out to breakfast yesterday. It was great. With Brianna graduating on Saturday, we of course did all these things for her. We took her out to dinner and everything else on Saturday. So then we came home, and it was just Scott and me, because Sierra stayed up there with her sister, and we basically he made me dinner, and he got me these candies that I like, and I said, well, no, I didn't even need to do that. Like I'm not your mother,
Right. Frank got me flowers, and I said, I'm not your mother.
I'm like, thank you, I appreciate it, but
they're beautiful.
But it's not something that's really, I don't find it necessary, because I'm if we're truly living that place where we're resolving the roles, then we all have those. My husband is very nurturing, as well as having the masculine things, and we've had incontinuities of energies over the years, but I never claimed it to be a man thing or a woman thing or whatever. Right. It just is what it is. So that's, and these are very, very 3D trivial things, but they're very important, because if we align our verbiage with the energy, then it becomes far more powerful, and just in alignment, it allows it to shift a whole lot more faster.
Right.
And we have so much. So one of the things I was looking at later on in the week, last week, was in a conversation, was really good. Here's a perspective of from my experience from the week before, right, of that past life thing that came up and all that, right?
Right.
So we talk about, so the funny thing is this, and if you look at how the earth is and how we are in living on the earth right now, right? Funny thing is, one of the things that struck me and was sort of a surprise when I went through the whole process and experience that I did the other week, was the anger I had at Gaia, at Earth, right? Which we consider a very feminine, divine feminine energy, right? So you want to talk about that being a very masculine energy within us, right? But But it was like so funny because it was so tied up with feminine energy and embodying one thing, having the anger and resentment of how could you have acted that way toward me, as if it were male energy. But it's sort of like, well, we created Earth from that. So from what I could see, it's like, so we created Earth from that unity-based separation, right? And then within the Earth was to play out this really, really big, dense play of separation-based creation.
Right.
Within the unity-based creation, which has caused a lot of this, right? From the beginning, right? Yeah. So that was really interesting to look at, and I still haven't really gotten I don't think I've gotten the whole picture of it, but I feel like that's what's coming.
Like there's something in there.
Yeah.
When you just ran through that, it was like, yeah, we're just scratching the surface on that.
Yeah, it's really big because it's really big. It's really big. Really big. So yeah, and when that came up in the conversation, like I had almost felt like it was puking out of me when I said that. Like it was like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. Because in itself, it's a dichotomy within itself, right? It's a paradox within itself, really. And it's like, well, so we claim it to hold the unity-based separation, and yet the whole energy of this entire experience has been separation, unity-based creation versus, that the separation-based creation here on or within the organism. Well, what a big, huge, you want to talk about balance, right? That's
right. Well, and if you think about the forces of nature, they're creative and destructive all at the same time.
Simultaneously. And look at how many goddess divine mothers you have, like Kali, right? Who birth and death. And you have, there's so many, and I can't think of them right now, but there are a lot of goddess divine mother archetypes that faces that all hold that same avatar of birth and death. And I would say, Gaia should be considered part of that too, because she does.
Right. Well, and I mean, when you look at places like Hawaii, what they're going through right now,
mm-hmm.
I think any volcano eruption people would deem as destructive.
Except it kills everything and builds something new, right?
Right. And even if you look at it in terms of like taking time out of the equation, look what Mount St. Helens, look at all the beauty that created.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Pele, that's it. Pele is another one, right? So that's the whole volcanic goddess out there. Yeah. So the birth and death thing. Yeah. So the question is what to do about that. It's sort of like,
well, not resist it. That's the thing I feel, is that I feel so many people are so uncomfortable with that dynamic, including myself initially, that it's like, whoa, hold the phone. This is nothing I remember. And
well, and if you think about
back to the embracing the shadow portion.
Right. Well, and of course the shadow work is a huge thing right now, right? So one of the things that I find really interesting is how so there's a yawn. How do I word this? It's sort of like saying, if we take off the masculine, feminine labels, right, and we go back to the feminine as unity-based creation and masculine being separation-based creation, right? So separation-based creation was created by unity-based creation, right, as a set of lessons, which is, of course, then why the masculine energy or that energy that has grown into what we call the masculine feels limited. And well, that's the nature of it, which is so funny. It feels limited and separate and exiled and subordinated because doesn't know unity-based creation because that's not what it is. Like, because in its nature and creation, that's what it isn't. Because we created an isn't by creating that. So that's the whole, like, it's like a hard thing to really get words and our minds wrapped around. But
and when you say that, it feels that ever so familiar.
mm-hmm.
But familiar from the perspective of, I trust that concept.
Right.
Not, I fully understand the intricacies of it.
Right. Because it's almost like when you brought up the volcano, that's what that energy feels like to me is the unity-based creation, creating separation-based creation. And some, like,
Yeah.
And it's almost like, oh, well, there she goes again, like put it in our face, put it in my face, it's like something like that. And so it's interesting because we all hold, and the funniest thing is that within our universes, within our individual, we hold both of those within ourselves as well. So there's this resolution of something we don't have a word for. It's resolution and completion of, it's almost like a recognition and a, seeing it.
Unification?
Yeah, it's a unification in a way of, it's like saying, I don't know, it's like an eyeball being angry at the body that created it. Right?
Right. Absolutely.
And saying, well, I'm not gonna work, I'm
gonna go off over here by myself.
I'm gonna go pop out and go roll down the road or something, go do my own thing. And yeah, sometimes there's dissonance, so you have issues with the eyes, right? So sometimes you'll have dissonance in the energies of that. But essentially, it's part of the whole creation.
Right.
In some way, shape.
Well, and it's how can you ever, to take your body example, how do you ever have a overall optimum health when you single out pieces and parts as unacceptable?
Right. And that goes back to the judgment of anything judging the other, right? That it feels like it's not. So then that goes back to our language. It goes back to like how we always say, oh, it's just a man. Oh, that's just a woman. Oh, that's just and it's like a minimization and subordination comes from some feeling of lack and the need to force the issue that, I'm better or whatever,
Yeah. So it's just that unconditional acceptance.
Yeah. And when we take away that, again, so yeah, the role thing, when we take away that role playing and we put that to bed and we say, all right, that's done and complete and whatever. Now let's, so it's time for us to bring all that back together, back into the soup so that we can create, so that we're going to create something new, right? So, or something different.
Right.
And it sounds very similar to what we've been talking about, but it's like a really next big level of it.
Yeah, it's such a fine adjustment on what we've been talking about. But when the Hubble telescope, when they first launched it, it had such a tiny degree of error in it. But yet once you got it to that distance, it was so magnified that it just wouldn't do the job.
Yeah.
Which is what this adjustment does, is it brings all that into focus and allows it to do its job.
Yeah. Yeah, and as we do that, then we can, and the ego wants to say, oh, well, then I go away because I lose my identity. I lose this identity or this role or whatever. And it's like, well, no, because then we start seeing the whole rainbow, like, and be able to not only see the whole rainbow, but then appreciate every single facet of it.
Right.
And see how beautiful it is in the bigger picture,
Right. Which just, if you sit in a place of that just fully empowers the ego to not have to have any of the distractions that we've required it to have to stay in separation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just phenomenal.
It is.
That is all powerful.
It is. Well, because then you're not doing not about anything. So you're not in lack about anything, right?
Right.
And you're accepting the power of all of it to say, I have this and I have this.
Right. Right.
And I might be embodied like this. And this is what I tell people all the time is we have been men and women in different lifetimes. We've been other beings in other parts of the universe or multiverse or whatever. We've been all kinds of things in form. And there's nothing that we are or that we aren't. Then that's part of the fun is we get to play all the roles and say, I really like this role, or I really like that one, or, I really like this role of being a woman with a lot of masculine qualities, or I like this role of being a man with a lot of feminine qualities, or I like this role of being this, four-legged being on this planet in this system, so. And when we stop, and again, there are so many that are still very myopic on, oh, well, no, this is the only life I live. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
And that's fine if that's what they choose to see. But it also does really limit our perspective because then this stuff just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Well,
and then you get the fear factor.
Right. Because then if you start screwing with my reality, right, and I feel like this like rumbling underneath, I'm going to go, whoa, and I'm going to resist that even more, right?
Right. Which if you think about it, we started out talking about all the little resistances that are created by, that misaligned thought, word, and deed of that separation and judgment of the roles. The first thing I thought of was, well, there are all those little pearls, the irritation and all those little pearls. But, that creates unnecessary ripples in the energy that just distract.
Yeah. And right now, what I keep on getting is there's no room for distraction anymore. It's time to stop.
Yeah, I've gotten to the point where I get so confused about when things happen and time, and
me too.
And I've just gotten to where I just accept it now, and I don't beat myself up over it, and I don't worry, oh, I'm really getting old, or it's just like, hey, time is just not part of my reality anymore.
Well, and I keep on saying that, and people laugh when I say that, but I'm like, no, I'm serious. Like, honestly, I come into it, I come out of it, I'm in it, I'm out of it. I mean, there are things where, there are conversations I've had within the last couple of weeks, like with my husband or my kids or whatever. I'm like, no, we had this conversation already. No, we didn't. Yeah, we did. Because you're going to tell me this, this, and this. And they're like, no, we didn't have this conversation before, but I was going to tell you this and this. So.
Right.
But yeah, such a weird thing. Okay. So yeah, there's just, and I try to put some kind of finger on what it is for us to focus on today. It just doesn't.
The thing that feels pertinent to me is just that unconditional acceptance, and that's the loss of the judgment.
Yeah.
So even if someone is still in a place of judgment, and the roles and the criticism and is to not judge their judgment.
Which is where we get stuck often, right?
Well, especially in this spiritual world.
Because I'm so spiritual.
um, because there's no right or wrong. It's all perfect, and it leads to the same place.
Right. Right. And I hear the thing that I have been, that I found that has been great in the past several weeks, because we've been talking about this, is I've been so much even more aware, in observance of any thought, even a flicker of a thought that judges, right?
Right.
Because whenever I have found that when that starts to come in, right away I hear myself, let it go.
Right.
Before I'm even consciously thinking about it, I just hear, let it go.
Well, in the place that I found this weekend that I had the hardest time with it was when I felt I was being judged to not be judgmental. I mean, that's, it's hard to say that it's all perfect when you're the subject of the judgment.
Yeah, that is true. Yep.
And I mean, that really got my hackles up. But that just obviously triggered something in me of my own judgment.
Right. Right. How dare you, right?
Right. I'm so spiritual. How dare you judge me?
That's right. Right. My God. Yeah. Yeah. There was a couple of things that, like, and my mother is one of the best ones that always reflects that crap back in my face all the time, right? So, like she was feeding the cats for us while we were gone, to Brianna's college graduation. And I've forgotten, because it's been so long since I've actually asked my mother to do that for me. I've forgotten things that she does when she does that, which is like comes in and decides to take it on herself to clean things and move things around and whatever, no matter how clean the house is when we leave, right?
Right.
And then, by the way, come back and brag about it. Like, oh, I fixed this for you because, it was a mess.
Yeah.
I mean, she literally told me she cleaned out our toaster, because I don't know how long it's been since you've emptied out the crumbs in your toaster, but it's...
And what did that have to do with feeding the cat?
I think it was because I had said to her before we left, because all of a sudden those little tiny ants have shown up, which we haven't had for a while, right? And so I put
after the crumbs of the toaster.
So I told her, just to let you know, like I just put out ant traps all over the counter, and it usually gets worse before it gets better because they get attracted to the ant trap stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Like, so you'll probably see a lot of the ants, just letting you know, right? Because the traps are there. So then that proceeded to her, feeling like she had to go and clean everything and empty the toaster out and everything. And I was just like, we didn't have any ants in the toaster. I hate to tell you, but okay. But then it's funny, because then there's that implied judgment, right?
Right.
And then there's that defense that goes up, like, how dare you? I mean, it was funny because even Scott, like, sort of like, we're on the phone coming home, and she's on speaker, and he just like rolls his eyes and like, there's sometimes it's like,
which means that you're accepting the judgment if you react.
Right, but you're judging the judgment too by going, well, God, blah, 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 and it's just that whole like continuous thing we go through it. So that sounds so petty, right? But these are these things that it's time for us to come to a place of saying, oh, and I caught myself when I started getting a little bit defensive about it. Like, okay, Mom, thanks. That's all I said.
Right.
It made her happy, made her feel useful, made her feel like she needed to do something, or made her feel better than me or whatever. That's fine. I'm like, okay, thanks.
Perfect. Right.
It was perfect. So I'm like, okay, great, thanks. Yes. After the first.
Right.
But at least that next step is there, the observant of let it go. Let it go. What value does it give you to put energy into getting irritated or judgmental about the judgment?
Right. Exactly.
And these are the really, really fine tweaks that are really important right now, because my understanding is we need all of our energy to be focused and present and ready.
Right.
And these are all little exercises of practicing that.
Yeah. Oh, I so agree.
Yeah.
I so agree.
So, it's like, okay, whatever. How many times can you say that to yourself? Okay, whatever, right? Because that's a letting go, saying, okay, whatever. It's okay. So, and then, then the ego wants to come cut in and be like, what do you mean, whatever? Because blah, blah, blah. If we don't care about anything, then what do we care about? It's just like this whole like.
Yeah. And well, what about this? And what about this? And, have you thought about this?
Yeah. So. And that comes back to presence, right? It comes back to being just totally present in now, and acceptance in now, and in a place of love in now. And,
right.
And to say everything flows. Everything flows. Not everything goes, but everything flows. And if I allow everything to flow right now, then every right now is the same in that. And we can just continue expanding our presence and our, consciousness. And that goes back to this role resolution and completion, and seeing the whole picture within ourselves, seeing the whole universe within us as well as outside of us.
Right.
And accepting and embracing that, to say, even the dark side, right? Even the darkness,
right?
Even the darkest parts of ourselves that we have judged so deeply that we wouldn't even look at them for so long. It's now time to say, look at how beautiful that is in the bigger picture.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see that, each time we take a look at this, it's like we go deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. Because this is because we have so many layers. That's what I keep on telling people, is that there's so many layers of this.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, I've done the shadow work.
Yeah, like 2 hours yesterday. Yeah, it was done. Right. Oh, it was funny. Alexa just said something in the kitchen, so
she agreed.
Apparently, but that's a continuous thing, because every time we come to a level of acceptance, and I found this within myself, and it's been a continuous thing for years now. Every time I come to a different level of acceptance, I'm asking myself to come to a bigger level of acceptance.
Absolutely.
Because I get to this level, and then it's like, okay, so now, all right, so good, you're here. Now can you take this too? And
right.
can you take this too? Right? And some people want to call it a test. I just call it, our baby steps in flow and ease and grace, right? Of saying, okay, so let's build it, right? We broke it down in all these layers. Now we can, I don't want to say build it, but build the remembrance of it, right? In layers.
Yeah.
Allow the remembrance of it in layers. So, yeah, and of course, so that's what people ask, well, when is this ever over? And it's like, well, when we're done here, right? Because then we've come to so many levels of acceptance and love and all that kind of stuff, that there is no resistance and separation, so therefore we don't exist here anymore.
Right.
We just go poof. Oh, I could feel that one down my spine. That was huge. Yeah. I was like, well, that was unexpected. Oh, that felt really interesting. So that, whatever that is, because that was powerful.
Yeah, it almost, the way I see it is, removing one of those veils that actually allows you to see things clear. So, and along with that comes an understanding or remembering of the purpose. And along with that, you lose the judgment.
Yep.
As you come to understand things, the judgment just falls away.
Yep. And as the judgment falls away, so do the limitations.
Right. Right.
Because then we stop limiting ourselves based on our judgments. right?
Or defining ourselves based on our judgments.
Right. Well, and I mean, and we do the same thing with money, right?
Right. That's so funny. You should just say that. You know, in the TV show, It's a Great Day to Save Lives.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, oh, well, you're such a, you know, that's such a good thing. Change that. It's a great day to make big money. Oh, but that's greedy. That's the, you know, and the judgment comes in. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's just another pencil.
Yep. It's a great day to have unimaginable wealth in my reality.
Yep.
It's a great day to have magic in every moment.
It's a great day to remember.
Yep. It's a great day to remember. And if we started every day that way, right?
Right.
You know, I've been, and I think I talked about this last week, but I've been almost every day in my journal. I allow all possibilities. I allow all possibilities with love and flow and ease and fun and joy. And that's big in itself. And the more I do it, the bigger it becomes. Like the bigger the energy of it becomes, you know?
Right. Right.
And so it's like, okay, I allow all possibility. I allow even more all possibility. You know?
It's almost like you know, getting those new thought patterns.
Yeah.
Instead of just falling into the ruts of the ones you have, the more you do that, the more comfortable, and so the more possibilities open up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And if it's a challenge in the beginning to just say that, then maybe the first question you ask yourself is, what if I allowed all possibility? Or what if I allowed this possibility that's been presented to me?
Right.
Yeah. So, and all of this is shifting the energy. So people ask about the importance of the words and all kind of stuff. And it's like, ultimately, it's all part of the illusion. However, it's the energy that we hold within each of those words that makes it an aligned energy or an unaligned energy, right?
Right.
So if we're in that place of aligning and supporting, you know, and actually even the unaligned stuff is aligned when we look at the bigger picture, but that's all bigger picture, right? So
Right.
Baby steps.
Right.
Or even just baby leaps is good too.
Right.
But yeah, even seeing the beauty and grace in the unalignment of stuff. And appreciating the alignment when it all flows together from the even bigger. Like, and so what I've been doing lately is if something feels unaligned, even if I'm like setting myself to be in alignment and flow, then I try to pull out perspective to see an even bigger picture to say, well, maybe this unalignment is just pushing me in flow into another place that I wouldn't have otherwise seen, right? Typically, when we feel like something is unaligned or wrong, it's because we are limiting our perspective from the bigger picture. So all of that, to allow all of that, to flow with all of that and come to that acceptance unconditionally. Oh, excuse me, there's a yawn. To allow all possibility and allow the possibility of the wholeness and that resolution and the completion. And it's almost like, all right, getting to the point of seeing the beauties of all the defined lines so that all of it just starts to blur together and become an even bigger beauty. Like, you know, however that is. All of that. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I don't know how I could.
Yeah. Okay. All right, well, let's go and do that, shall we? Apparently we're done.
Apparently. That was my doorbell.
Do you need to get
and my
that?
dog. Let me check and see.
Yeah.
I don't know if I do or not. Okay.
That was not. That was nice. And what I was shown that was really cool. Was I was shown this line of things, and I think it almost looks like a spine, right?
Uh-huh.
You know, like how we talk about alignment, and it's like, well, by saying alignment, you're limiting that too, because it's creating this linear belief.
Or rigidity.
Yeah. And it was like, so sometimes it works well and sometimes it doesn't. But why would you, it was such a weird thing. It's like, why would we hold ourselves to a linear expectation for something that is multidimensional and holographic?
Wow. Well, and something that just came into me in that whole thing was that what holds behavior in place is the judgment of it, which it's like, oh my gosh, what you think you're doing by judging somebody is trying to change a behavior or whatever, and it's actually the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like that that unseen, and the thing that comes to mind is like skeleton that holds things in a certain place, which is like the spine.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it felt really nice. And then I just saw things starting to, then there was something, it was interesting because you know how people talk about the Merkaba being the chariot of the body, you know, the interdimensional chariot of the individual. And it was sort of like, well, you can look at that way. I mean, it's a representation we've created, though, that really takes the alignment, the linearity out of alignment. It's really the wholeness. Yeah. Because in the wholeness, there is no time, which is a linear measurement and judgment, right? So it was like, oh, and then it was so interesting because then I was like seeing all these little Merkabas, right? All these universe. Oh, it was just like, and then I was like everything all part of the big, and I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna let that go, and I'm not even gonna like try to define that because it felt really good.
Yeah, I mean that was
Freeing.
free.
Yeah.
It really was. So and it was almost at the same time it was freeing, it was almost like duh.
Right. Well, of course. It's like, yeah. Of course. Hello.
Right.
But, you know, we set ourselves to flow and ease and all that kind of stuff. So layers upon layers. That was really nice.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's just like I'm going to have to really like allow that remembrance of alignment in its true form.
Oh, yeah.
In that wholeness versus in the linearity that we expected. I feel so powerful.
Right. Yeah, because alignment does have that word line in it.
Yep, it does.
Yeah.
All right, well, everybody sit on that and enjoy that this week. See how that all pans out. And, you know, the key for all of us is when that judgment starts coming in, to observe, not to judge our judgment.
Right.
But to simply let it go.
Right. Think of it as, in letting it go, you let the behavior go.
And that includes that of ourselves and others. So.
Right.
Oh, God, I just feel so free right now.
I know.
It's like, wow.
Me too.
Something really shifted that felt awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone have a fabulous week, and we can't wait to report back
next Monday.
Yep. Have a great one.